This is the story of an innocent orphan named Haley, a girl who spent 5 years with her Aunt Debbie. Debbie has now started a new life in the city with a job in downtown Frankfurt, and she's not taking Haley with her. Debbie is forced to decide that Haley will be taken to the high mountains of Switzerland and left with her grandfather, Albert. People in the neighborhood would tell Debbie that Albert was very short-tempered and a very aloof person. But Debbie had no other option. One day, Debbie holds little Haley's hand and walks down the mountain path. The wind is rising, a cold breeze is blowing. As soon as it touches her, a smile comes on Haley's face. She is trying to feel freedom. She takes off her shoes and thick coat and runs on the grass in her light clothes. Debbie tells her to walk carefully, but Haley laughs and enjoys the mountain path. This is how they play and jump all the way to the top of the mountain, until they reach the cabin where Haley's grandpa Albert lives. As soon as Debbie saw him, she called out loudly. Albert noticed Debbie coming from a distance. He stood up in anger. In his harsh voice, he shouted that he doesn't want this girl. He doesn't want any responsibility, and both of them should return. Haley looked at her grandfather in fear. Debbie pleaded with folded hands, asking him to keep Haley for a few days because she would not be able to take care of her anymore. But Albert was not ready to listen. Finally, Debbie took a deep breath and said, "Fine, if you don't keep her, then I will take her back to the city." Saying this, Debbie turned and started returning, holding Haley's hand. But after a few steps, she secretly hid Haley behind a corner of the cabin and whispered, "Wait here." Then she herself hurriedly went down the mountain, leaving Haley behind with Albert. Soon, Albert realized that Debbie had cheated him, leaving Haley and running away. He angrily called out to Debbie as she ran down the valley, but she didn't respond. Albert pulled Haley out from behind the hut, sent her inside, and closed the door. Little Haley was left outside in the cold. There were tears in her eyes. When she got no response from inside, she began to shiver. She went to a nearby small cowshed and collected dry grass. There, she lay down on a bed where Albert's 2 goats were kept. It was in that grass shed that Haley spent her first night. The next morning, when Albert came out of the hut, he found Haley sleeping on the hay in the cowshed. Without saying anything, he milked a goat and gave the fresh milk to Haley in a bowl. She drank it quietly. Albert spent most of the day busy with his work, ignoring Haley. In the evening, when it got dark, Haley asked him hesitantly, "Grandpa, where should I sleep?" Albert said in a harsh tone, "Wherever you want." Haley looked inside the cabin. She noticed a ladder leading to the attic. She climbed it and found a bed of dry grass and a small window. From there, she saw the starry sky. Happily, she made that grass bed her own and slept peacefully there on her first night. The next morning, Albert was outside the house cutting wood. A herd of goats was grazing nearby when a 13-14-year-old boy came shouting. It was Peter, a boy from the village. Every day he would take everyone's goats to graze on the mountain. Albert stopped him and told him to take his 2 goats as well, and said that Haley would also go with him so she could learn the mountain way of life. Haley jumped with excitement hearing this. Albert gave her bread, cheese, and sausage for lunch, and happily, she went with Peter and the goats to the mountains. Haley spent the whole day in the mountains with Peter, running after the goats, playing in the wildflowers, and enjoying her freedom. She was so happy, as if she had been freed from a cage and was now flying in the open sky. Peter, too, smiled, seeing Haley so happy. In the evening, when both of them returned with the goats, Haley's face glowed with satisfaction. For the first time in her life, she felt such freedom. That evening at Albert's cabin, Haley was still, a little hesitant at first, but soon, love began to blossom between the lonely grandfather and his granddaughter. The next morning, Albert worked hard for hours, sawing wood and hammering. By evening, he had made a small wooden chair. When Haley came home after playing, she noticed that now there were 2 chairs at the dining table. Albert placed his hand lovingly on her head and said, "Now you will stay here forever." Haley was overjoyed to hear this. She couldn't hold back her tears. She ran and hugged her grandfather. Years later, happiness had returned to Albert's lonely life. After this, time seemed to fly on wings. Every day, Haley went to the mountains, grazing goats with Peter, here and there, running and being happy in the open air. Albert's relationship with Haley also became deeper. After some time, snow started falling on the mountains, and it was getting cold. Peter also went to school. In the winter, and for a few months, he went to his grandmother's house. Haley now sometimes had to go to the mountains alone, but she often felt lonely. To keep her happy, Albert made a lovely wooden bird and gave it to her as a gift. Then he also made a strong wooden sled. Grandfather and granddaughter spent hours on the snowy slopes, sliding on the sled, laughing, their voices echoing through the valley. But these happy days were not forever. A few years passed, and Haley was now 8 years old. One day, suddenly, Haley's Aunt Debbie appeared again, coming up the mountain. Seeing her, Haley was very surprised and happy because Debbie was visiting her for the first time in years. But there was no happiness on Albert's face. Debbie said she had come from Frankfurt to take Haley. A rich family was there where Haley would have a great place to live and study. If Haley went there, she would be able to attend school in the Obey city, wear good clothes, and even have a friend her own age. Hearing this, Haley's heart was terrified. She did not want to leave the mountain, Albert said in a strict tone. "No, Haley will not go anywhere. Her home is here." But Debbie insisted. She said, "I have always wished well for Haley. Here she has no school, no friends. She has to study in the city. Only then will her future be better." Albert got angry. He said, "Earlier you left her here and never cared. Now after many years you've come to take her away? No, Haley will stay here." The argument escalated. Albert angrily slapped Debbie and immediately asked her to leave. Debbie went down the mountain, mumbling in frustration, pretending to leave. But she had another intention. She secretly climbed up again by another route and reached Haley, who, at that time, was playing near the goats. Debbie spoke sweetly and began engaging Haley in conversation. She said, "Haley, your grandfather also wants the same thing. You should go to the city. There you will get a big school, new friends, and comfort. It will be good for you." Haley panicked and said, "No, I cannot leave, Grandpa. I want to stay here," Debbie replied. "For your own good, your grandfather has put a stone on his heart. That is why he is letting me take you." Innocent Haley believed Debbie's words. With a heavy heart, Haley finally agreed. She thought maybe her grandfather really wanted her to live a better life. Debbie immediately grabbed her hand and quickly started running down the mountain. Tears filled Haley's eyes. She could not understand whether what she was doing was right or not. Behind a rock, Peter had seen everything happening, but he could not do anything. In the evening, when he brought the goats back to Albert, panting, he told him that Debbie had taken Haley with her. Albert was stunned when he heard this. He remained silent. For a moment, it seemed as if his heart had broken. Then he ran down the trails into the valley, chasing after them. He was old, but at that moment, Albert seemed strong and determined. Panting, he reached the village below. But by then, it was too late. At the station, Debbie had already taken Haley. Albert stood helpless on the road, watching the path that stretched far away. His eyes grew wet. The darkness of loneliness, from which he had once escaped, seemed to return again. The next morning, after a long journey, Debbie and Haley reached Frankfurt in Germany. Haley was stunned to see such tall buildings and such a crowd. She had never seen a metropolis like this before. After some time, they arrived in front of a grand mansion. This was Henry's house, where Haley would now stay. There was a knock on the door. The servant came out. Debbie told him that she has brought Haley. The servants take them inside. Seeing the pride and glory inside, Haley was terrified. Then someone came down the stairs. A shrill voice echoed, "Who is this?" This voice was of the governess of that house, Rebecca. She was a middle-class woman, a tough old lady, whom Henry had entrusted with care and discipline. Rebecca came down and suspiciously looked at Haley from top to bottom with her eyes wide open. Dirty frock, tangled hair, bare feet. Haley looked just like a wild village girl. Rebecca didn't like it. She asked Debbie bitterly, "Is that the girl?" Debbie folded her hands and replied, "Yes, madam. This is Haley. You had said you wanted a girl raised in a hilly environment. Haley is very nice and intelligent. She will go well with Clara," Rebecca muttered, furrowing her eyebrows. "Let's see." Debbie quickly said goodbye to Haley and left. Now Haley had to live on her own in this strange house and had to be molded. A little later, from the top floor, a faint sound of a wheelchair turning came. Haley watched anxiously as on the stairs appeared a cute blonde girl sitting in her electric wheelchair. Clara was Henry's 13-year-old daughter who could not walk on her feet. Haley smiled lightly and waved to greet her. Rebecca sternly told, "Clara, this is Haley. While she is with you, I want to teach her good practice and rules." Clara humbly replied, "Yes, Fräulein." And then she said to Haley, "Come, let's go to my room." Haley and Clara became close to each other from day one. Haley unwittingly became her good friend. Of course, Haley made one or two mistakes. Once, Josh came in and gave Clara's wheelchair a hard push, making it hit a table. But Clara always showed wisdom. She took responsibility for Haley's mistake and calmed Rebecca down. This overflowed Haley's heart with immense love for Clara. Now Haley had to accept this as her new home. She had to learn the maids' ways. The maids bathed her, washed her, and put clean clothes on her. They combed her hair, taught her how to use the knives and forks on the dining table. Haley tried to learn all this silently. The biggest problem came with studies. Every day, along with Clara, Haley also had to study with the personal teacher. Soon everyone realized Haley could not read properly. Rebecca was furious on hearing this. She scolded Haley and said, "Such an ignorant girl does not belong in this house. She should be sent back immediately." She even threatened to remove her, but until Henry returned, it was their compulsion to keep Haley. So even Rebecca could not send her away. Clara intervened and said, "We will teach Haley gradually." Rebecca frowned, glared at them, and stomped out of the room. Haley watched all this, horrified, and she began to feel ashamed of herself. Slowly, Haley started adjusting to the house rules, but her heart still remained stuck in the mountains. Night, she often dreamed of her grandfather in the mountains. Sometimes she woke up in her sleep and started walking. Once or twice, the servants found her outside her room in the morning. He was shocked to find Haley on the floor. "Why leave your soft bed and lie on the ground?" Haley herself didn't remember anything. Whenever she got a chance during the day, she would go to the window to look at the sky and try to see the distant mountains. She loved the green fields there, missed her goats and the free air. One day, Haley thought of a prank. She told Clara, "Let's go out secretly today. Let's go for a walk." Clara was nervous at first because she was not allowed to go out alone. She was not ready, but after Haley convinced her, she agreed. In the afternoon, both of them, without anyone noticing, went out the back door. They enjoyed the open air in the parks and looked at the hustle and bustle of the market. Some hours later, when they returned, they were terrified. The servants found them and brought them home. As soon as they arrived, Rebecca became angry. As punishment, she barred Haley from dinner and made her stand facing the wall all evening. She threatened, "Next time, I will lock you straight into the basement." That night, the insult was unbearable for Haley. As soon as everyone went to sleep, she quietly left her room. She had decided in her mind that now she would run away from here. She filled her coat pockets with leftover bread rolls from dinner. Then, very slowly, she opened the main door so that no one would wake up. But then, from behind, a harsh voice echoed, "Where are you going, Haley?" Haley turned around in fear. Rebecca was standing there, holding a lantern. The theft was caught. The small bag of bread pieces fell to the ground, and all the bread rolls scattered on the floor. Rebecca said angrily, "So you were trying to run away. You are so comfortable here, yet you don't appreciate me." Tears started flowing from Haley's eyes. Standing on the stairs above, Clara had seen all this too. Her eyes filled with tears, and she went to her room crying. Haley realized that if she left, Clara would be heartbroken. So she returned to her bed sobbing and gave up the idea of running away from home. The next day, Clara had locked herself in her room. She was upset that Haley had wanted to leave and run away. Haley also started to remain sad and depressed. Every night she began to have bad dreams. A few days later, Haley and Clara talked again. Haley held Clara's hand, cried, and apologized, saying, "I will never leave you. You are my dearest friend." Clara also cried. She hugged her, and both of them reconciled. Clara's health also started improving. A few weeks later, Henry returned from his foreign tour in the U.S. His mother, Margaret, also came with him. The house was filled with joy. Clara ran to hug her father. Henry noticed that his daughter looked cheerful. Then he looked at little Haley standing nearby. "Papa, this is my friend Haley," Clara said excitedly. Henry lovingly called her and stroked her head, smiling at her. Margaret also came forward and took Haley in her arms. In her warm embrace, Haley felt affection like that of her grandmother, and her eyes became moist. After a while, Rebecca spoke in a complaining tone. She told Henry that Haley was a mountain goose, that she didn't know anything, and that Henry should send her back immediately. Margaret heard this and intervened. "First, I will see this girl myself." That evening, Margaret sat Haley down and began reading a storybook. After some time, she suddenly stopped and said, "Now you read further." Haley said nervously, "Grandma, I can't read." "With love," Margaret explained, "it doesn't matter. Try. You like stories, right? If you read them yourself, you'll get to know so many more." Haley was touched by her grandmother's words. She became determined to work hard and learn to read. Margaret encouraged her and helped her recognize some words. The gleam of hope returned to Haley's eyes. After this, Haley started practicing every day, but at the same time, a strange series of events also began in the house. For many nights, the servants felt as if there were noises, sometimes light footsteps on the stairs, sometimes the sound of a door opening or closing. All the servants began to whisper that there was a ghost in the house. Rebecca was so scared that, as soon as evening fell, she would start remembering God. Henry didn't really believe in ghosts and goblins, but the atmosphere definitely felt eerie. At last, one night, Henry saw Haley. While everyone thought she was asleep, at midnight, she walked out the main door into the darkness and stood gazing towards the mountains. The doctor was called the next day. He explained that Haley was homesick and must be sent back to the mountain immediately. Henry had to accept this decision with a heavy heart. When Clara learns that Haley is being sent back, she cries bitterly. She pleads with her father not to let Haley go, but there was no choice. Haley was also sad that she had to leave her best friend, but deep inside her heart, she was happy to return home. The day before departure, Clara was angry. She locked herself in her room. Haley tried to convince her that she would come to meet her, but Clara kept crying and didn't listen. The day Haley had to leave, the house servants gave her a lot of food and gifts so that she could cross the mountain and also take something back to her family. Margaret lovingly hugged Haley and bid her farewell with blessings. Haley took out the little wooden bird among her supplies, the one Albert had made for her. She gave the toy to Henry and said, "Please, give this to Clara and tell her I will. Miss her very much. Promise to bring it to me on the mountain." Henry promised hoarsely that when the time came, he would definitely bring Clara to meet Haley. Sitting on the train, Haley looked through the window and waved goodbye to everyone. Rebecca felt relieved inside, thinking that peace would now return to her home. Clara, in her room, kept shedding tears by the window, but in her heart she kept hoping that she would meet Haley again. After a long journey, Haley finally reached her beloved hill village. As soon as she got down at the station, she happily took off her shoes and walked barefoot on the green grass, running freely. First, she ran towards her friend Peter's house. Peter and his mother were left speechless upon seeing her. Haley went straight inside to her grandmother and hugged her with love. Then she took out fresh, soft rotis from the basket and handed them to Grandma. Tears of joy flowed from the old grandmother's eyes. She touched Haley's face with her hands, recognized her, and prayed in a trembling voice. Haley smiled and then ran down the mountain towards the top where her cabin stood. On the way, she took off her expensive city frock so she could run faster. From a distance, she saw the roof of her house on the hill. The sun was setting, and Albert was standing in the courtyard, looking towards the distant road as if waiting for someone. Suddenly, on the mountain path, he saw Haley running. Albert couldn't believe his eyes. The next moment, Haley was in his arms, crying out, "Grandpa, I am back!" Albert's hard heart melted completely. His eyes became moist as he held his beloved granddaughter tightly. The separation of so many months washed away in their tears. Haley had finally found her true home. After her return, Haley's life was filled with happiness again. She ran daily in the mountains, played with the goats, and supported her grandfather. She also wrote letters regularly to Clara, sharing many interesting things about the mountains and always including an invitation to meet her again. Finally, one day, that chance came. After receiving several letters from Haley, Clara and Margaret planned a trip to the Alps. One bright summer morning, Clara, her grandmother, and their servants arrived in Haley's village by horse carriage. Haley jumped with joy when she saw them. She ran and hugged Clara tightly. Margaret requested Albert to let Clara stay with them on the mountain for a few days. Albert readily agreed and welcomed the guests. This is how Clara began the process of living in the mountains. Haley took Clara to the mountain plains where they enjoyed life to the fullest, feeling the first rays of the sun in the open air, roaming the meadows with the goats, sleeping on dry grass in the attic at night and looking at the stars, seeing the sky full of life. All this for Clara were absolutely new and magical experiences. She was here feeling that happiness which in the closed environment of the city she had never experienced. But here Peter felt that Haley would leave him and go to Clara, giving more time to her. Out of jealousy, one morning he took Clara's wheelchair up the hill, pushed the wheelchair. Off the edge it fell and was crushed. Albert immediately understood that this was Peter's mischief. He scolded Peter and asked him to explain his actions, but he had to bow his head in shame. Albert took Clara on his back and headed up the mountain, took her for a ride to a height. Spread out there, Clara's face lit up with joy at the sight. There was happiness. Suddenly, a colorful butterfly came flying and sat on Clara's feet. When the butterfly flew away, the girl tried to catch it. Clara stretched out her hand and inadvertently, she stood on her own feet. Seeing this, Haley, Peter, and Albert's eyes were filled with joy. In the next few days after this incident, Haley and Peter supported Clara. Slowly, she learned to walk. With constant practice, Clara's strength returned to her legs, and she every day started going better than the previous day. After some time, Margaret and Henry came to pick up Clara. Henry initially was worried that his ailing daughter being brought to the mountain was risky, but as soon as Clara walked to the door on her own feet, his worry instantly turned into happiness. He got emotional and hugged Clara. Heartfelt thanks to Haley, because of whom this miracle had happened. Margaret said goodbye, lovingly gifted Haley a beautiful notebook and a pen. She said, "You are fond of writing, aren't you? Here is your diary. Write your stories in it every day. Keep writing, and always listen to your heart." Haley took the gift to heart and thanked her with moist eyes. On leaving, Clara hugged Haley and said, "Soon I will see you again." Haley smiled at her, bid farewell. And with this emotional story of Haley and the beautiful tale ends. Finally, Haley finds her true family, true friendships, and a life of freedom is regained. Now she is with her grandfather and friend Peter, living a happy life in the mountains and writing a little bit every day in her new diary, growing on the path to fulfill her dreams. And with this beautiful story ends here.